Welcome to the next episode of the Dragon's Den podcast. Today we have on Chief Wayne Prejean. Chief Prejean started with the Lafayette Fire Department in the early 60s, and he spent 20 years with Lafayette, serving 10 of those years as the fire chief. He sat down with us to tell us about his rookie year, his time in fire prevention, battling the administration, and trying to fight the good fight as the president of the union. His time was not all sunshine and rainbows, and there were a lot of battles and struggles as a young fire chief in the early 70s. We were honored to get a chance to sit down while he let us document his history. This isn't my standard episode, but it is one that's important to me. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the next episode of the Dragon's Den podcast. Today we are honored to be joined by one of the former chiefs of Lafayette Fire Department, Chief Wayne Prejean. Chief Prejean, thank you for coming and joining.
Thank you for inviting me.
So one of the missions of this podcast, as we had stated very, very early on, is to kind of help document some of the history of our department, where we came from, some of the stories that had come through, and just once again capturing that history. And you are going to be one of the more important pieces, because not only did you come on a very long time ago, which we're going to get into, but you also had the chief position. And when you talk about the evolution of our department and how we move forward, some of the struggles that we encountered, the battles that got fought in the union, or on the union side, or even on the city side, you were there for a lot of that process. So you're going to be able to give us some backstory and some just history, which is really what we're looking for that. So the way that we always start this podcast out, Chief, is we want to know a little bit about your backstory, but also what got you into the fire service and what was the process like. And if you don't say it, I'll say it now. You came on in February of 1963.
Yeah.
And you retired in, what time did you retire? In you had it here.
October.
Of what year?
82.
82. So you were already out by the time I was born. So that's, you have quite a bit of, and people call me old, which is kind of like you were already out by that time. So you've got some deep history of some of the earlier days of our fire department. Lafayette's has been running since, 18 in the 1890s, I think is when we started. But you're almost as far back as we can grab, which I think is awesome. And it's just, I'm truly honored that you're able to come in and share some of that. So you come on in 1963. Start us down that journey.
Okay. Basically, I went to high school in Lafayette Senior High School, graduated, and decided I wanted to be a druggist. So I was going to UL, and I was dating my wife in high school, and second year of college, we decided to get married, and that kind of took you out the picture. You had to go to work. So I had a job, and my brother was on the fire department. And he says, man, you need to come on the fire department. We got good benefits. And at that time, they had just got a pay raise, $300 a month. And that was a wow, big, good, nice size salary. So I decided to go, and I said, how I'd do that. So I went to take a civil service test. And my brother says, no, Chief Broussard every morning comes in, have his coffee, come at a certain time, and just say, hey, Chief, I'd like to get on the fire department. So Chief Broussard was the type guy, when he went and had his coffee and paper, nobody bothered him. So I about the third time I walked in, I said, Chief, he said, son, you can quit coming. He said, I appreciate it, but you don't have to come anymore. So finally I went home, and I told my wife, my mother-in-law was there, I told my wife, I said, I'm never getting on the fire department. It's all about who you are, politics, and so forth. So my mother-in-law said, what are you talking about? I said, well, you have to know the mayor, and he and the fire chief select who's coming on the fire department. She said, well, I went to school with Ray Bertrand. You want me to call him? So she went to lunch with him, and she came back and said, you're going to work Saturday. I said, what? She said, you're going to work Saturday. You're going to get a call. And sure enough, I got a call from Chief Broussard, and Well, I had showed up Saturday morning, 8 o'clock was my first shift.
So he was saying, hey, I'm not hiring you.
Exactly.
Stop coming get me the coffee.
Exactly.
What a
And
waste
he
of time.
wasn't too happy with, when he called me, I could tell by the tone, it's
he
like.
didn't even want to hire you. He was pushed.
The mayor said, I need to hire you. That's how the question went. Very, very direct.
It's funny if you go back and listen to Ray Landry's episode. He said essentially the same thing, and I think it was the same chief. I could be wrong, but I'm almost sure it's the same chief. Sure. And it was that he would make him his. Ray said I would go and I'd make him his coffee, like give him his coffee, and then he would pick the paper up. And hey, chief, you got any spots? And he wouldn't even pull the paper back. He would say nope.
That was Chief Broussard.
And then one day, Ray's story, but it matches. He pulled the paper back and he said, Ray, you want to work for Lafayette? Yes, sir, I do. He said, good, start Monday. And then boom, back to his paper. But y'all are telling the same story, which is cool.
And in those days, they just hired on the first. You went to work on the 1st or the 15th. That was the pay cycle. They wouldn't hire in between in those days.
So you show up, right? Day one, and once again, based on what we know from Ray's time, there was no fire academy. You had no training.
Yeah, nothing. Showed up. I was in blue jeans. First thing they did was said, son, get one of these squeegees. All the trucks are out. Saturday was general cleanup, washing down the station, and they told me you're going to go buff in the bedroom. So in those days, the guys played a lot, captains and stuff. They wasn't too, if they didn't know you, So anyway, walked in. They said, you ever operate one? I said, no. They said, just hold the handle and go with it. They left. I hit the handle. I knocked a bed totally down. And I'm sure you used the Buffett fire. And if you don't,
you don't get it balanced.
Oh, yeah. It takes off on you.
See you later.
And they came in, they shook their head. Don't know if you're going to make a fireman, So finally, Chief Bobman was the swing chief, and he was really a very nice person. He came in, he called me. They gave me a nickname right when I came on.
Mm-hmm. I
replaced a guy called Mayo Landry.
Okay.
So they called me T-Mag. Everybody had a name. T-Boy, T this, T that. Everybody had a nickname. So I was T-Mag. And right away he walked in. He said, T-Mag, come in the office. I want to talk to you. And he's telling me about, the two captains you have are good captains, but they tough on the young guy. So you're going to get a lot of stuff. And basically, training was, I made 2 fires the first day. At 10 o'clock in the morning, they said, let's go. See, Lafayette, we didn't have all the volunteer fire department. Mm-hmm. The closest fire department was Crowley, and they had 1 truck, I think. The next was, I think Brobridge had 1 truck. But other than that, that was it. We'd make all the fire calls. We'd go as far as Generette to Jennings and stuff, making fire runs to back up other people. And right when they said, get some boots and a helmet, and I'm up there, and they said, put those boots on, the coat was about, I could have slept in that coat, and the boots didn't fit, and the helmet was like this, and I'm on the back end of the truck, and one of the other firemen, John Leger, he just hailed me and said, don't fall, man, don't fall, they're going to fire you. So anyway, that was it. Made the first fire call. It was a grass fire, and I was the grass beaters at that time, and then at 2 o'clock the next day, this was amazing. All the trucks are out. We had, 4 stations at that time. And all the trucks on call. And Chief Broussard had a bad heart attack. And I think that's why he was so grouchy. He couldn't do the things he did before. And all of a sudden he said, we have a call. Let's go. And I looked and he said, it's you and me. And I looked and said, what? So he gets and they were open cab, Mack open cab trucks. He drives, and I'm on the right side, and I'm saying to myself, "They just told me this man had a heart attack," you know. So anyway, we drive up at the house, said, "Grab that hose line." It was a booster reel, and I'm going to the house. They had a little small trash can, probably wasn't really big, and put it out and got back, and at the station, drove back. In those days, if that truck went outside, I don't know about today, but if that truck went outside the door, you had to wash it down.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sprinkle it down, take chamois, clean it and all.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Hey, boy, you by yourself, do the whole truck." And that was it. And that was my first day. I went home and told my wife, I said, "I don't know about this job." I said, "Man, they like to kill me the first day, you know." So, but it was a good experience. I enjoyed, you know, after you get in the groove and they learn you and you learn them, you know.
You might be the last person ever in the Lafayette Fire Department ever to run their first fire with a rookie and the fire chief driving a fire truck. The chances of that happening after, you know, like that would have to be pretty slim, right?
Right.
Where your fire chief of the Lafayette Fire Department is driving and pumping, and you're putting out the fire, and you got nobody else. There's nobody else coming, right?
That's right.
Everybody else is Crowley is and for those listening, that's a 40-minute drive down the road. That's a clip out. So, yeah.
And I was number 63. That's the number on my helmet. I have it. They gave it to me when I went in fire prevention. They gave it to me, the helmet, and I kept the helmet. I was number 63 on.
So the you said the no training, which we know about already. There's no fire academy, so everything was on the line. How to pull the line and set the hose lines up and build the water supply, throw the ladders. How did y'all manage that with no fire academy?
Every day, when a captain took you for 2 hours, whether you went through ropes, learning hose lines, the type of hose lines, how much water will flow, and all that. And they did that, and then they assigned a senior fireman, Clarence Huval, had come on 6 months before me, and he's training me. And
if that's all you got, you know,
that's it. And you learned, and then they had regular training sessions for the whole crew. You know, we worked 60 hours. We had a 10 and a 14-hour shift. The 10-hour, you went to work 8, got off at 6. And then on the Sunday, you rotated, and then you went to night shift, you know, which was from 6 to 8 in the morning.
But that wasn't a standard like A, B, C crew. It was a different shift. It was a whole different deal, or
we had A, B, and C.
You still had A, B, and C. Okay, but it was a 60-hour.
But a 60-hour work week.
Okay, no Kellys, nothing like that. It was just a stock.
Oh, that's it.
Stock deal.
And my 2 days off are Wednesday and Thursday, and that's it. You know,
part-time job that you kind of were you able to juggle.
I had 3 part-time jobs.
Even as a rookie, as a young guy.
Yeah. After I was there about 3 months, my wife didn't work in those days. Most of the wives didn't work, so I got a job with Retail Credit. One of the firemen got me on there doing insurance investigation reports and stuff. I was a lifeguard and assistant manager at Mouton Pool. So in the summer month, they hired me to be a spare guard when I was off. They needed the help. I worked there, you know. And then I sold insurance for a while, you know, part-time. Mm-hmm. So anyway, in those days, all firemen had a second job. You just had a second job.
Yeah.
I mean, if you wanted nicer things in life.
Yeah, if you want a decent exactly. Lifestyle, yes, right. you had to. You have on here, could not leave the station ground. So when you had station duty, it was back in the day, y'all could
go to the edge of of the line weather station. They had, I worked at Central the first year, which was Andrew Broussard. They named it after him. And in the morning, one fireman would go 2 blocks down the road to Keller's or 3 blocks and get donuts, you know.
That was every morning?
Yeah.
Cool.
And then lunch, a pickup truck would go pick your lunch. They'd go to all the houses. They start to run 10:30.
Okay. How'd that work?
And, well, a wife would fix your lunch, and they'd go, and that's in the back truck, they had slots where they would put your lunches. They would go to all the houses if unless the crew cooked. In those days, most of the guys, they got meals from home.
But the meals, they wouldn't bring their meals in from work. They got delivered. They got delivered.
The truck would go out to your house. They'd drive up, and your wife better be, ready, because they would knock on her door, boom, and they were gone.
Oh, when you say go to the house, you're not talking about firehouses. They would literally go to your wife's house, and say, "Where's the rice and gravy at?"
Yeah, they may have 20 dinners to pick up.
They were picked. That is. Oh yeah. I can't believe Ray missed that story, because that is an interesting. That's an interesting story. Oh yeah. That blows my mind.
Isn't that something? No. And then they stopped it a couple of years after I was there. They stopped it.
What a different time period. Holy cow.
Because we were getting too many, as we opened another station, the time period wouldn't work.
So I guess y'all transitioned to, that's when I guess cooking inside the station became like the standard.
Right.
Guys just learn how to cook.
Right.
Well, let's talk about that. South Louisiana, we had we're gonna hopefully have Captain Colby on at some point, but cooking at the station was kind of a critical kind of component. Now that you start cooking, is that kind of where most of the firemen kind of in South Louisiana, you say the wives were cooking previously, but now the guys got to step up and learn to cook.
Well, I was at Station 1, and we had one guy, he cooked all the meals. But then I opened station. I was the fireman with the captain and driver, and opened Station 6. Mm-hmm. And the first night, we had night shift for that first week. And in the second week, the questions went, "T-Meg, you know how to cook?" "Oh, yeah, I was an Eagle Scout." "Can you cook a gumbo?" "No." "Can you cook a courtbouillon?" "No." "What can you cook?" I said, "Learn to cook eggs. I can cook on a campfire." We don't have campfires here at the city. So the way they worked it is there were 3 firemen on the firefighter ship, captain, engineer, and a fireman. Mm-hmm. And you had your turn to cook a meal. Mm-hmm. You brought everything for that meal, and you cooked it. So they told me, they said, when it was my turn, they said, "Have your wife bring we're going to make a chicken stew. Chicken, this. And called my wife, and she brought all the stuff, and they did it. I was watching. Second time, you stirred the pot. And the third time, your turn, you cooked the meal. If you messed it up, you had to go get the ingredients and start again. That's how you learn how to cook.
Yeah, and was it still, I cook it at the house all the time, just a basic rice and gravy? Was that kind of the overwhelming
rice
thing?
And gravy. We do meatloaf, cabbage rolls, things like that.
Okay, you had a little variety.
Oh, yeah.
Nowadays, it's you go find whatever meat's on sale, and you just, if the pork's on sale, that's what we cook. If the chicken's on sale.
Rice and gravy. Had a lot of rice and gravy.
Cook a lot of stews, yeah. So from there, you're having, let's talk about riding on the back of the truck a little bit. Ray talked about it, but that was, you said, hold on to you and don't fall off, or they're going to fire you. Talk about some of that, because tailboarding days and never coming back. So when I get a guy that rode some decent tailboard, I'm like, hey,
you
tell
had
me some
to
stuff.
Hold on. And when I first went on, you didn't have the leather straps. You used to have a strap you could put on, but you didn't have the leather strap. You just hold on. When they hit a bump, brother, your feet was going off that rear tailboard. And I never forget, we were headed we could see a train coming. I was on the back, and the firefighter, I'm not going to mention his name, he saw it coming. He jumped off the truck. We kept going. The fire got the fire captain says, "Where's so-and-so?" Said, "Man, he was scared. He jumped off the truck." "What do you mean he jumped off the truck?" I said, "He jumped off the truck. He's somewhere, I guess, at the railroad, wherever we were at." So we fought the fire, and they got on ready. At that time, assistant chiefs were the only one had a pickup truck they could use. They went pick him up, and they got on this case big time, in the living room. We could tell they were chewing him left and right, And we had some crazy time. I remember going to a fire, Castile, and I'll just say, and we smoke all over in the building. So the chief says, "I want you two to stay in this room. There's a vent, Dan, that could be coming this way." And we stay, and we stay, and we stay. After about an hour and a half, I said, I opened the door. I said, "There ain't nobody out there, After a while, a lady comes, she opened the door, said, "Hey, what are y'all doing there? That fire truck left about 30 minutes ago to back to the station." I said, so we called, they said, nobody, y'all gonna have to walk back to the station. So here we are in muck clothes. We were about a mile, I guess, from we walked back. And Chief said, "What were y'all doing in that room?" Well, I said, "You the one told us not to leave that room. We didn't leave, in those days, we did not leave that room."
Yeah.
He said, "Well, call the captain. Let's go in the living room." That's where they chewed everybody. And I could hear him saying, "You had 2 firemen and you come back with nobody on the tailboard?" And I mean, we had some good comedy stories, but
Cool. Yeah, it's such a different time. That's
Oh,
why I like
yeah,
hearing about
yeah.
it, because it's so, I would say it's outlandish, but it's it's just stuff like I would say would never happen today. We got our own pile of outlandish stories, but specific to that time period, it's cool to hear. It's cool to hear how things operated. So training so back to the kind of pulling it back a little bit, training was a critical part of y'all's day-to-day operations.
Yeah, and after, I would say after you were there about 3 months, they would really quiz you. You had to go read. And those days we get all of our books from Oklahoma University. I remember that was the only source at that time. And you had to read chapters, and they would give you a test on it. And like take knots, for instance. Captain would come in and say, "Here's the rope, tie all the knots." And if you miss one, you stayed in there all day long time till you could do it blindfold.
Cool.
And we go out and, every morning they would test the pump.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Put it in operation back. Then the fireman, that's what you would do.
Mm-hmm.
Fireman's job. Engineer pull out and you test.
And you're flowing water, generally flowing some water.
Yeah. We take the booster reel out and flow a little water.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're moving through, and how long did you spend as a fireman before? Did you promote to driver? Did you what was your evolution as you're moving through these years?
Okay. I was at Station 6, and I was taking a lot of courses. I was a water safety instructor, first aid instructor for Red Cross. And anything that would come, I would go take it. And I would ask, in those days, it just started exchange of time. So the firefighter, I'd say, "I want to go to class tonight at 6. Would you stay till 8:30?"
Mm-hmm.
And we pretty well did that, helped each other out. And I went to every class I could take on safety and things of that sort. But and we kind of progressed. And then from there, the position came open as comparative assistant fire inspector. That's what they call it. Actually, you were paid engineer's pay.
Okay.
And
But you were a fireman at the time, correct?
Yeah, I was a fireman. And they'd call you assistant fire inspector, and they had the fire inspector. He had a captain's rate. And he had a little bitty cubby hole at Central.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget, they had 7 of us take the test, I think, and only 2 of us passed.
Mm.
And we knew who was going to get the job. The guy that was up there, he and I were the only two had college, you know. So but he decided he was quitting. He was going to Marines. So
Okay. Left
the
one man.
older guys, you know, seniority ahead of you, really wanted the job. But they had no choice. I was next on the list. So I never forget Chief Broussard. Chief Broussard was the older chief that was kind of a rough character, you know. And they had to fill that spot on Monday. I get a call. We get married, my wife and I, to go on vacation. At 10 o'clock at night, he called my house. He said, Tim Egg, you want that job? I said, yes, sir. Report tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. I said, well, Chief, I was, you know, we got a vacation. We were headed out and stuff. He said, you want the job or you don't want the job? I said, okay, I'll be there. So I canceled all the plans of vacation. My wife, you know, not too happy.
Not too happy.
So anyway, I report, and my captain was F.D. Garderblade. He was an old guy, and he couldn't drive. I had to drive all over. And he had a little pad. That's what he'd write all. He'd go into a building, and I was training with him, and he'd say, that's wrong. He'd write, this don't meet code. He'd write it, you know, and he'd hand him a piece of paper, and he'd say, hey, boy, you wrote down everything? I said, you told me to write? I'm right. Well, that's our record. And he put it on a shelf. So, you know, I'm like, we're in the 20th century. So I went to the chief. I said, Chief, can I talk to you? I said, Chief, if we're going to do this right, we need a typewriter. He said, there's one right here. I said, there's only one typewriter here, and they own that typewriter most of the time. Mm-hmm. So you asked me to buy you a typewriter? Yep. The answer's no. I said, well, stamps? How many stamps you need? Well, I said, I got 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I said, can I get a roll of stamps? So in that time machine, no. I said, about some rubber bands. He said, let me see. He would collect them from the advertiser. Here's a whole stack of them. Take them. I went back there. I said, holy God, what I got into, you know? So I was at a function. They sent me to stand by at the auditorium. First time I did that, told me what I had to do. And she said, you go by code and you do that. Well, the mayor was there. And I told him, you know, we were talking, how you like the job and all. And I told him, I said, you know, you don't have a typewriter. I said, we don't even have a telephone. We have to walk from this office all the way into the main building to use that telephone. He said, what do you mean, you know? So anyway, he said, it'll get done. Well, the next Monday morning, a typewriter shows up. Telephone man comes in. Chief Broussard walks in, and he said, I said, Chief, where you want to put the phone? You can put the phone and the typewriter on the ceiling. I really don't give a damn where you put the damn thing. He was so mad that the mayor called him and told him, bye, you know. And he said, by the way, I want to see you typing on that machine. That's what he called him. I want to see you typing on. So anyway, and then I start formally, we got a file cabinet. I had somebody felt bad, give us a file cabinet. And I started typing my reports and sending them out and mail them. And Chief would look at me and say, how many stamps you used this month? I said, well, Chief, I did about 30 reports. So you use 30 stamps? Well, I said, that's how I get them unless I hand carry them. So anyway, that was my start in fire prevention.
How long did you have on as a fireman before you slid over to fire prevention? Was it a few years?
Yeah, about 3 years.
About 3 years.
I just moved fast because I passed the test and, you know.
You were the guy. There was nobody else. When the other guy went to the Marines, so it had to be
you. No, and the other guys all, they didn't pass it.
Yeah. So,
and you see, I had chemistry in college, so they had questions about chemistry on tests and that days, and helped me. And the other guy passed the test, had taking chemistry at college.
So so now we're moving through this a little bit. What was your next step? Did you take the official investigator or prevention position, or?
Well, I worked in fire prevention, and I got involved in the union. The union was very strong. We had monthly meetings, and let me tell you, I was number 63. Usually at a union meeting, you had 45 guys.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they did. And they took the union very serious. We laughed. They told me a story that when they started the union, the mayor at that time got mad and took all the beds out and said, y'all are not going to. So what they did, the firefighters, and I can name you names, at the Central, they took chairs and sat in the front with shotguns. And people coming out of Don Seafood would say, saw them firemen, they're sitting there with shotguns. And they'd go tell the fireman would say, well, somebody stole our beds, so we guarding the fire station so they don't steal anything else. And then the mayor showed up, and he was furious and told the chief. Chief said, well, and Chief really was back in the fireman, So, and then I came into play. I was elected secretary because some of the guys couldn't keep records. And then the guy said, why don't you run for president? You have an education, you can speak well. And I ran for president, and the guy that was going to be the president, they're the cliques, and the guy's going to be president. They was getting ready to go to International Association of Fire Chiefs Conference, Indiana, never forget. And captain called me my captain called me outside. He said, you need to pull your name out, run for president. I said, well, we talked it over, and the guy said, I'm going to run. Oh, he said, you are? Well, right now, go get the lawnmower and start cutting the grass and back. Oh, yeah. So the guys running against me came in and said, you're going to lose big time. You're going to be embarrassed. I said, really? He said, yep. I have all the votes. I called the guy. Votes came in. I think I had 40 votes, and he had 15 votes. And he's calling God and said, you voted for me? And everybody told him you had to vote for him.
Ooh.
And all the guys were laughing and smiling and said, we need a change. So I even had firemen that were chiefs that had left and retired come and chew me out. What are you doing? You wrecking this fireman. And then as a young guy, you have ideas. Well, we start off real quickly. I went to Baton Rouge and trained with Vic Busey, was a very powerful man, head of the AFL-CIO. Mm-hmm. And Vic was Vic was a fireman in Shreveport.
Okay.
He was head of the Fire Prevention Bureau, but he was heavily involved in the union. He was involved in barmaids, have a union and all that. Mm-hmm. So finally they offered him a job to be the state AFL-CIO president, which was big bucks, and he left. But I never forget, went to training there, and what you had to do was, at a session in Baton Rouge, go be a lobbyist on your day off. You had to be there at 5 a.m, had to wear a sport coat, tie, and your shoes tied. He would inspect everybody, just like the military. He said, boy, your pants are dragging. Pick your pants up. You can't go talk to a senator or one of your representatives looking like hell. And then you gave you a book, and you chase that guy all day till you get to ask him to do this, this, and this. And we trained, and that's how we got all these fire bills passed.
Well, yeah, let's talk about some of that. So part of what we're doing, part of what I want to do is, I think that it's important for the guys now. We got 288 in total in our fire department, close to. Union membership is pretty good, but participation is not quite there. So one of the things I think we should be doing is to talk about what are some of the battles that y'all fought in the union back when you were going through it, that, there's things that we have now because y'all went through y'all had to do the inspections with the shoe polish and go chase down legislators and do all that heavy lobbying. That's not something I got to mess with. And so y'all, like I said, what are some of the things that y'all were able to push forward and hang on to and fight for that we
when I
enjoy?
first made president, the state union asked us to go join a civic club. But the first 3 years, they paid the dues. So I was off Wednesday and Thursday. The only club was the Beaver Club. So I joined the Beaver Club, and they had 200 members. They would meet at the Vandal Hotel, and I'm a 22-year-old guy with all these business people, and the mayor was in there, and Chief Bruce, the fire chief. So when I show up as a young guy, he's all successful business people, and who am I? I'm a fireman, And they asked you, I'm shaking my knees. They asked me why I joined. I said, well, they asked to get in the civic club to promote the fire service. And I never forget, the first thing we did was the uniform. I went to Chief and I said, Chief, when I go to the Beaver meeting, I'm in these khakis. In those days, you wore khakis, black tie. You wore long sleeves from the end of September till May 30th. We wore long sleeve shirts. Mm-hmm. Then from that period, you had a short sleeve. And it was hot. You had summer. And we go to a fire with a tie on. Can you imagine that? I mean, we'd pull a little bit, but you had to keep your tie on all the time. So I went to Chief and said, Chief, could I wear a blue shirt with a tie and a blue pair of pants? Well, what, you think I'm buying that for you? I said, no, I'll furnish it. But, well, you can wear it only to go to the Beaver Club meeting. So at 11 o'clock, I would change into that. 1:30, take that off. And we kept pushing uniforms and went on TV. They had the Antlers Inn show. And Ann says, what are y'all trying to get? I said, we're trying to get a class uniform. And I used a bad phrase. I said, we look like those kids at the Holy Rosary because they wore the same thing. And because it was a black school, they thought I was making fun. What I meant was the uniform. So the mayor made me go apologize to the principal and everybody. And they were laughing when I went. I said, I wasn't making fun. We're just trying to get out of these khakis. And because the khakis, my wife had to starch them, take these wires, put them in the pants. You had to have your pants all starched. Shirts, well, everything had to be on. And the wires went through a lot for you to be a fireman. And so we wore khaki. And then finally, the mayor said, how much it cost, Chief, to put them in uniform? Oh, he said, I'm not putting them in uniform. They're going to stay in khakis. I said, no, they're not. We're going to put them. So they got prices, and we finally went to a blue shirt, blue pair of pants.
And it's been that way ever since.
Yeah.
I mean, the variations of, but the blue has held for a long time now.
Yeah.
What about
in some of the bills we fought in the legislature? We used to get 2 weeks vacation, and you had to be there. You got a week. 1 to 5 years was a week. Mm-hmm. After 5 years, you got 2 weeks.
That was it.
That was it. And you had to take it all at one time.
Whether it was 1 or 2 weeks, everything was together.
You took you 2 weeks, you full 2 weeks. So we went to Baton Rouge. That's one of the bills we worked on. And we worked it real hard. We started with 18 days vacation.
Okay.
That was the bill we got.
And that's where our starting point is now.
And then
so it's still
holiday pay, we're getting time. And then went to time and a half and double time. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what they're paying today, but
it's double right now.
We passed the bill. Then I personally They wanted to put district chiefs around the state. And that was to open some promotional deal. So they asked me to write the bill. I wrote the bill. And we had the big debate and argument. They wanted to put 6 stations per district.
Okay.
I said, no, I think we ought to have 4, you know.
Sure. Span of control, keep it.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Better. And I argued that, and we in Baton Rouge, and I never forget, Vic Buser walked in, and he said, I like Prejean's idea, we're going 4. That was it. So you took bill handwritten and you brought it to the legislature, and they redid it in legal terms and stuff. So
let me ask you, Chief. We're split by districts by 4 stations. Is that a state? Is that a state law type of thing? So you're never going to go into a Louisiana station where they've got a district chief running 6 stations.
No.
Unless for
New
whatever
Orleans
reason
is
they're
the only exempted fire department.
Interesting.
They exempted from all state laws.
Okay. That might be a whole nother podcast right there,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a whole nother thing. Anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah,
the union?
and then
what
we worked hard because we wanted better education, and we fought to get LSU training.
Okay.
And I remember they used to train out of Pleasant Hall. They didn't have the facility they had today. And we would train at Pleasant Hall. We'd go to classes. They had fire inspection classes. They had hazardous material class, all the different classes. Then finally, after we pushed hard, we got that property at LSU, and we got funding, and we were under the LSU system. And we hired 4 instructors. Carol Herring was the guy in charge, but we really had somebody from LSU, one of the doctors, and doctorate degree was over us. And I hated when they changed the name to this academy name they have now.
Sure.
Because LSU has such a great reputation. When you say, I went to LSU Fire College, and you were at some conference in California, you'd say, they completed LSU Fire, you know.
Yeah, it's a big
They
thing,
had a
sure.
ring to it.
Yeah.
And today, there's no ring to it.
It's the evolution of time, good or bad. It's part of the process, unfortunately.
Some of the other things that we were exchange of time.
Big one. That's a huge one.
Yeah, we had limited exchange of time and worked on. And the problem we had is that you had to pay the exchange of time back within that time period. I'm not sure how they work it today.
Now it's 6 months, but it would used to be within that time period, within that pay cycle.
Month period, you had,
month.
Yeah.
Within that pay cycle. Got it.
Yeah. And you were limited to 3 days exchange of time.
In a year or in a pay cycle?
In a month.
In a month. The period.
And that and the pension, we went and made improvements in our pension.
Yeah. I said exchange of time is huge. The pension is really the big push.
Yeah. And right before I left, that's when they came up with the state pension. Made change. We wanted the old pension,
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of just talk about a little bit of that to, once again, like I said it before, to where did we come from? Some of the fights that we don't have to deal with today are because, the guys are all of our predecessors fought some tough battles, had a lot of conversations with legislation, and did a lot of that back end work that allowed us, that put us in a position to where, not to say that we're lackadaisical, but where we're not having to fight so many battles because those battles, the big tough ones, were fought so many years ago, which is good.
And one of the ones was 60-hour work week. Like as an inspector, I worked 6 days a week.
Oh,
8 to 6, 6 days a week.
So
Sunday was my only day off.
So it didn't matter if you weren't a fireman; you were essentially still doing the same.
We had to work on that
under
60
the same
days.
60.
Yeah.
Oh,
there was no 40 hours for us.
Oh, that's a lot of hours when you're awake for all of them. 53 hours is not terrible if you have some time to sleep. It's not unbearable, but for for a daytime worker, doing 6 days a week, 10-hour days it's got to be rough. Starts to wear on you.
Yeah.
Because now your part-time job essentially goes away. I mean, if you had one, now you're away from your family at night. You're one day off. You're going to be working. You lose income essentially is what's going to end up happening.
Yeah.
So,
and then when I did not make captain, the mayor at that time was so mad. He was wanting to fire me so bad. Chief Boban became chief. Chief called me. He says, "The mayor wants to see you and I at 9 o'clock." I said, "Okay." Walked in. Mayor said, "If you don't get out of that union or quit going to Baton Rouge and try to pass these bills, I'm going to fire you." And the mayor said, "We think, I ain't getting out of the union. I'm the president. As long as they elect me, I'm going to stay president." "Oh, no." He said, "You'll be looking for a job." I said, "Well, I didn't do anything wrong. We'll have to go to civil service." So he gave me extra assignments to do. And then I had the old pickup truck to ride. So they took the pickup truck away and they gave me bus tickets. So if I'd had to do inspections way down Johnson, I rode the city bus. I had no vehicle. I had to walk or ride the city bus where we went. And I never forget, about 3 months later, we had passed a number of these bills, and we were working on a pay bill to start $400 a month. That was good bucks in those days. And Chief Boban walks in, he said, he wouldn't call me Wayne, he called me Wing. "Wing, what you did now, the mayor want to see you and I. Let's go, boy." So we walked to City Hall, and mayor went through his cycle. This time he has the other trustee in there with him, a finance, Boudreaux. And Boudreaux is yelling at me, "You're going to be fired before the end of the month," and all that. And I said, "I didn't do anything wrong. I'm just working to try to better the working conditions for the firefighters." So the mayor said, "I'm giving you a direct order. I don't want to see you in Baton Rouge." It's a direct order from me. I said, "Chief, you heard the order." I said, "Well, Mayor, I don't think when my day is off you can control." He said, "Oh, you're only off on Sundays. So how are you going to go to Baton Rouge?" Because those days, the chief would let me go to, for a day. We had a bill going up.
Right.
So finally, Victor Busey called the mayor.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, he called him Ray. He told me what the conversation. He said, "Ray, you're really getting out of line. We're going to have to do a campaign against you, and I hope you're not rerunning for office." So at that time, the AFL-CIO had a lot of money, and they would politically get involved. But anyway, they kind of, and then,
it never came to fruition. You were still allowed to go to Baton Rouge, or did you have
But I had to take vacation.
You had to take vacation to do it.
I had to take vacation days to go.
Yeah.
And if the mayor was there, I wouldn't go and talk for 1 hour bill at the hearing when you had the hearings, because I had to sit in the background. He was there, and it was
difficult,
very difficult.
Ugh. I want to back up real quick because you wanted to tell some stories from your rookie years, and I want to make sure that we catch it before we blow over it. Let's back up. You got cats and dogs and snakes.
Yeah, it's just
I wanted you to
at that
fall
time,
backwards.
fire department, we did a lot of public service work, and I'll make you laugh. When I first went on, they said there's a dog lady. Her poor little dogs is under the house and won't come out, so they send me and the captain, and we go in. I could hear the dog barking. And he said, "Meg, put not your helmet, just your bunk gear. I'm going to push you under there, and you grab that dog and bring him out." Well, I asked the lady what kind of dog. She said, "Oh, it's my little dog. I love him." It was a German Shepherd, and he was in the box, the furnace box, and he ate my coat up. And I kept telling the captain, get me out of here. And he kept pushing me. So finally, when I got out, my coat's all torn up. He said, where's the dog? I said, I don't know. Dog stand or give me a pistol. I'm going to shoot the dog in a minute. So the lady come out, and the chief drives up. And I said, Chief, look, he ate my coat off. Chief said, call another fireman to come. So they had a fireman. He went there with a pike pole, and they finally worked the dog out. And then they had, I'm just telling you some comical things that went on.
Yeah, go for it.
Cats. I remember we had the guy I worked for, Gordonly, went to get a cat out of a tree. He put it in his bunker coat.
Okay.
And he missed the run, the ladder, and came down, crushing the cat. Cat tore his chest up. They had to go to the hospital and take stitches. Then we get a fire. He was a college professor by UL, and he had a couple parrots, and the parrots got out. So the chief says, y'all get the ladder, big extension ladder, and look at that parrot go. I said, Chief, he's going to fly away. Get the parrot. Got up, right going up, parrot flies. I think we made 10 trees till finally I said, this ain't working. We're a block away. Carrying the light looked stupid, and finally they said, Chief, we ain't never going to catch that parrot. So, he said, okay, y'all get back on the unit and go back in, Those was just some of the things. And then snakes, and I'll forget, they sent me when I was inspected. They said, lady said, there's a snake in the wall. So Chief says, Assistant Chief said, put your gloves on, put your hand. I said, I ain't putting my hand in there. We're going to take something off. Well, it was a nest of snakes. Whew. Oh, they had about 10 of them in there. And then we went on coons. Lady had left a window overnight. I'll take it by possum. Now, possum got in the car, and possum had ate the front seat of the car. And Chief said, just get in the car and get the possum. I said, that possum tearing everything up in that car. So finally we got a net, and we got him out. It didn't have no animal control in those days. But those are the crazy stories, things we did.
That's as we're all the way here in 2026, those services come online, but before those services, you just had the fire department. Sometimes we're all hazards. Sometimes we'll get, every now and then we'll get called to some off the wall stuff because there's no special service for that thing. But y'all were everything. Like Ray was telling stories about like previous to ambulance services, right? Before Acadian had come in. Or when the flying squad had gone into service, and y'all had to make runs all the way out to Pecan Island. That is way out of district. That is several cities over, because that's all they had. We were it. Y'all were it at the time.
Yeah, and one of the problems, we made calls like with Brobridge, and it was more common. Those guys would curse, about everything, And I never forget, we went on what they call a shell road, and I was going to Lake Martin. I was trapped.
Uh-huh.
And if you moved the car, he'd cut his legs off. He was that way if the car was curled. So, Assistant Chief we had, and he looks and he said, y'all think we can lift that car? I said, yeah, if we get a wrecker, not that small, if we get some kind of crane or something Chief can lift, I think we can slide him out. And they cursing and stuff, and they're beating on the car. I said, man, y'all keep beating on the car, you're going to cut his legs off in a minute, And finally, we got a guy had a small crane. He came out, picked it up, and we pulled the guy out. But those are the kind of things we did. We had no formal hazmat rescue unit type. And when I was a fire inspector, we started. Chief says, you want to start a rescue? Because I was a water safety instructor. I was a diver and all that. That was our first patch.
Yeah.
And we go to Mouton Pool. We train the guy. We got some scuba equipment. How we got that, I don't know. But Chief got us a couple of tanks, and we go in the bayou, and I laugh. They go in the bayou, and it said, hey, wait, we can't see nothing, man. I said, you got to feel. Put those gloves and go slow. You go, It was really calm. But to credit those guys, we had about 9, maybe 10 of us in what we call a rescue squad. And we did some diving for a couple of bodies. which I think we found one of them. And we did some amazing things with no equipment.
Yeah.
It was just the heart was there, you know.
You just figured it out. That's one of the cool things about South Louisiana, and especially, you know, back in your day. And you kind of referenced it back a little bit before we started the podcast, talking about how everybody culturally, so many people were French, like so many people were just speaking French at that time period. But also what adds to that is the fact that Lafayette wasn't a big city in the early 60s.
Mm-mm.
So you got a lot of farm equipment, a lot of hands-on kind of experience, and you were able to figure things out in that arena, in the world that you lived in.
Right.
And so you kind of take the we'll figure it out knowledge to the fire service. And that's kind of what that happens a lot. Sometimes there's situations we get put in where it's like, man, there's no formal you know, a kid gets his leg stuck in a recliner. It's like, okay, there's nobody went to a class for that. We're just going to have to figure this thing out, even though we've never seen it. You know, we have a lot of tools now, which is helpful, but it sounds like that's what y'all were doing. There's a problem. We got to recover a body, or there's a car we've got to go fish out. We have zero training on this, but we'll figure it out. There's going to be some bumps and bruises, and you know,
and some of the things, you know, were rough on the guys because, you know, and I moving to a comical scene because I was a water safety instructor in first aid, and Ray was one also, and I was getting all the guys certified in what we could get for free with Red Cross.
Right.
And Chief walks in one morning. He said, "You got to go give a life-saving course."
Like
I said, "Where?"
CPR style.
He says, "At the convent." I said, "Where the nuns are?" He said, "Yep." So I'd never been. So when I walk in, they have all these nuns in the big black havocs, you know, they sitting around, and all these young, I don't have a proper term, but they were young girls getting ready to be nurses. There's a term for it. And they all in bathing suits, and they were good looking, I want to tell you. And the nun looks at me and she said, "What are you looking at?" I said, "I'm looking at the girls that are getting ready to train." She said, "I don't like that look you have." I said, "I got to look at them and train them." So anyway, I never forget, after about a week, you have to go in and do the carries. And the first one, your hand, if you know what I mean, your hand's going to go to a certain position. That nun come over and said, "You, get out the water. What are you doing to my nun?" I said, "I'm trying to teach how to do a rescue." You know, I said, "There's the book. You can look, sister." So finally, the superior nun was visiting. She's laughing. She said, "Can I talk to you, Mr. Prejean?" I said, "Yes." She said, "We've never done this before. And I noticed your hand will go over their breasts and stuff like that. But these older nuns are getting real upset. Any recommendation?" Said, "Could you leave one of them and get rid of the 7 or 8 of them? Because that squad," she said, "Oh, yeah, for the second week." She said, "Yep." She said, "We'll, those go." So one nun stayed. And I explained to them what I was going to do before.
Sure. So let's hop back. So that was some of the older stuff, how y'all operated, because we don't do like cats and dogs. We don't respond to that anymore. That's not a thing. You know, we can, speaking of dogs. Yeah, so that's some of the old stories. So let's move forward to back forward to you are in you're in prevention. You're starting to move forward from that point. Did you want to go through?
Well, what happened is, because I was so heavily involved in union work, you know,
correct.
The mayor wouldn't promote me for 3 years. So I stayed in that rank for 3 years, and then finally, when I got promoted right before he left, he knew the other mayor was going to promote me, so I got promoted. And in those days, you could take the test for fire chief, very competitive. You know, and I was only 30 years old, so I took it, and that was all politics too.
Yeah. Know? Well, let's talk about that. So now you became fire chief in 1972. So you were an 11-year guy to be the fire chief of not a big city, but we are we are one of the largest cities in our area, right? It's not like it's not like we're Bro Bridge or some of these smaller departments. So, one of the biggers in the state. You're 11 years on. You said it was like, how do you land in the fire chief position? You took the test, and you got all these people that are going for it that want it, but you got selected.
There were 29 took the test.
Okay,
6 of us passed.
Wow.
Yeah, and we some of them had college degrees too, but in agriculture and stuff like that. So, and they had worked in volunteer fire departments. And basically, what happened? Kenny Bowen was the mayor, and when he was running for office, he told me, he said, "You have a lot of qualifications. If I get mayor, you got a good chance of being my chief." I said, "Well, I can't be your chief till the chief retires." I mean, that's not the way it works, So anyway, I took the exam. Lindsay Barry, who was an assistant chief, made the high score, and Lindsay had some college. Castile and I both made the same score. We were second. And the mayor had made publicly he's going to hire from the top 3. And then one of the city councilmen wanted to go outside the department, hire somebody, give the test again, and it was about a week before the test expired. And the mayor decided that he was going to, him with this particular city councilman, was going to go outside and get an outside chief. And Sonny Mouton, who was head of the Senate, called me to a meeting at his office, and he said, all the politicians I know, the sheriff and everybody, want you to be the fire chief. You're young, but we think you can handle it. I said, well, he ain't put me. I mean, I can tell you that right now. He said, well, we're going at that time. Carlo Lister was sheriff. He was head of the Senate. Luke LeBlanc was state representative. I don't remember who was, I think LeBlanc, Kirk of Court, 5 or 6. He said, we got a meeting with the mayor. And he called me that night late. He said, you're going to be the fire chief. I said, really? Should I know what happened? You don't want to know what happened, but you're going to be the fire chief. So the Monday, I went to my Boy Scout meeting. I was Scoutmaster Fairway, and got home. My wife said, the mayor called him, wants you to call him. We're going to appoint you as fire chief. I said, oh, the last hour. My wife said, shut up and call him. So anyway, I called him, and, he's, you're a young guy, but I think you can do the job and all this. And then when we went, that was the funniest. He called all the department in, and as many companies they come with Central. And the 2-3 chiefs that had passed the test were sitting in the front, and everybody knew who was going to get the job. The deputy chief was going to get the job. So when I walked to the back, it was crowded. Ray was against the wall and some other firefighters. And I can't, they said, which one of them idiots do you think going to get the job? And I did. And Ray and the rest of them said, what? I said, so anyway, Kenny went through and gave his talk, and he said, now I know y'all ain't going to agree with me, but I've made my choice. And he said, Wayne Prejean, my choice. Chief, come on up. And man,
it was a little cold.
Cold, and as they walked out, some of them wouldn't shake my hand, Yeah,
and, very cold.
Ray and them, all the young firefighters in the back clapping and yelling and all that, But that was it, and I became fire chief, and my hardest job was trying to make changes.
Well, yeah. Look, we're here. Let's talk. Let's talk about. So you go into the position. What's your mindset? Did you already have a plan for how you wanted to move Lafayette forward, or move it in a different direction?
Yeah.
What was your strategy to?
Yeah.
manage
wanted
that?
to create, we had a fire prevention bureau, but not a real one. So I wanted to create a bureau, training division, communications. I wanted them to be a real division.
Let me back you up, Chief. You make it in 1972. You become fire chief. What was training like? Did training have a division?
One guy.
Okay, at that time it was one. Was he even a fire chief, or I mean, was he even a training chief?
He was an assistant chief that they assigned to go be
a training.
He wasn't
division.
training like chief of training. He was just. So when I came in, I went to the mayor and the council, and I appointed 2 officers to become chief. They were chief officers, Warren Gilboa and Harry Arsenault, and that was our first training division. I told them, I said, we only have 2 inspectors. We need about 9. So they gave me 6. Milton Pepper became chief of the Fire Prevention Bureau, and we hired him as secretary.
Okay.
Melvin Foreman, we hired some more communication operators in that department. And that, we started to grow. My problem was the fire alarm. I had older chiefs that didn't want to make changes.
Yeah, that's a big shocker.
And I'll give you an example. The fire academy was just kicking up in fire command, and they had come out with a scenario when you go to a fire, the front of the building is A, the right's B, the rear C, D is the left. Okay. So when you're going to just on a scene, I went 3 weeks training in the National Fire Academy, Emmitsburg, Maryland, and they trained us how to. So I come back and I present that to the fire alarm. And it went over about as big as, So the first fire we went to was Lafayette Junior High had a room on fire. And when I drove up, Chief Benoit said, in those days, the fire chiefs, they wanted you to be like directing the fire. And during my chief tender, I said, that's really not my job. It's your job. I'll handle news media, I'll handle whatever equipment you need or stuff.
Policy, procedure.
Yeah, but me going direct the fire, I'm really an administrator now. And that's what we learned at the academy. So, but anyway, I was at the fire and I said, PJ, you go take the C position. He said, he was deputy chief. C position, what are you talking about? I said, the rear of the building. Okay. So anyway, they start talking. I said, what are y'all doing in position B? And it went silent. And then the fire was in the back of the building. So I said, see, give me your a report on where you at. All right. I see him come around the building and he said, oh, we're going to put the fire out or we're going to play A, B, C, D, And I'll never forget that. I said, that's it. So I went to sit down with the mayor. I said, I want to send all of my guys to the fire academy because I'm on one page and they not even in the book. They're on another page. So he said, how many you want? The most we can afford to send is 3 a year. I said, good. Send 3 a year. So I decided I sent an assistant chief and 2 district chiefs. And they fought it. They come, we're not going.
You don't say.
Why are you going? I said, well, you going for training. You're going to have to order us and we're going to fight it. I said, I'm paying all your expenses. You're going to Emmitsburg, Maryland for a week and a half and don't want to go. So at the civil service, I said, what do I do? They said, well, you have the right to order them to go. You paying? Yes, I'm paying for everything, And when they got back, we decided to go to LSU and have a whole departmental training because I did not know as chief how would we handle a major fire attack. We had some, but how do we handle
major incidents?
How are my people going to perform? That was what I wanted to see. So I went to LSU and I said, Carol, he was the director. I said, I'd like to bring a crew at a time. And at that time, I guess, I don't remember what the crew, we were over 100 guys, probably about 60. He said, you can bring the whole crew. I said, the assistant chief and everybody on that shift's going to go. I said, the city's going to pay overtime. They're going to rent the buses. You know, they gave me a $40,000, I think, at that time. And I said, all I want to see is y'all put some scenario fires and see how they perform. And as chief, I want to sit in the background, take some movies, and see how they perform. So we had the first meeting, and about half the head of the union comes, and I'm their fearless ex-leader, and I said, they're going to have to go. Oh, no, you can't force us to go. So Victor Busey called me, and I told Vic what I was trying to do. He said, well, they're crazy. You're paying them. Now, let me tell you what we did. So I go to civil service, and Civil Service Board says if the chief gives y'all a direct order to go to this one-day training, he's paying y'all overtime. Now, listen to this. I paid him 2 hours pre-overtime to get to the training center to catch the buses and 2 hours to go home. On the bus going, we had donuts, orange juice, all that stuff for them. We had lunch for them there. Coming back, when we hit Bro Bridge, because I had one ice chest, I had cold beer for them if they wanted to have a cold beer. And they still complain. And we went out, and when I watched them perform, I said, oh, my God. You know, one of the shifts were good, but one or two were kind of weak on attacking certain type of scenarios. But city paid for it and came back, and we had quite a few critiques, you know. And
so as a younger guy, I'm thinking as a younger chief, like clearly as a younger chief, you've probably got guys that have been on 25, 30 years, and they're kicking back, and you had to make a decision, right? Am I going to force this training, force it, and just take the kickback, or am I going to fold and say, you know what, I'm not going. This isn't a battle that I want to fight, and you chose. This needs to be done. This is a priority in of the things that you had, right? Developing training as a real division, standing that up as a division, improving the inspection side of it. You said I'm not backing down on this, and you knew that outside training was the answer. You knew that there was a problem, and that because that's what I'm kind of, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but Lafayette wasn't going to solve the problem of what you viewed as a problem, this training problem, trying to get us to organized on using what now is a standard. What's funny listening to that is now the ABCD side is completely accepted by everybody. And you were at the forefront of the fight where this needs to be a thing, and we're just going to have to take the beating. Because I'm pausing on this because this happens in our current fire service where there are things that get brought up, and we face the exact same resistance that you faced. And guys need to understand, hey, you're going to get resistance, but it's still the right thing. And I have a feeling when you were the fire chief and you went to the NFA and you saw all this, you go, this is the right way. We know it is. And so you just have to go through that brick wall. That you just have to take the fight.
The first conference I went to, they sent me to Los Angeles. And I'm in there with chiefs from Rochester, Chicago, you know, all those areas. And, you know, I'm Wayne Prejean, 32 years old, from Lafayette, Louisiana. And they talking about, and I'm in the corner. They had a cocktail party at night, I'll never forget. And I'm having a drink by myself, and I'm saying, I hope they stay away from me, man. So chief of the Los Angeles Fire Department, he wrote a book, Hill, and he walked up and he said, hey, son, how you doing? I said, fine. Young chief, that's great. He said, how many men you have in your fire department? I said, oh, I did it like that. And he said, what kind of training you had as a chief? And I'm kind of doing this to blur my words. And he said, son, put your hand down. We have the same fire you have in Lafayette we have here. We have high rods you may not have, but firefighting the same. And he said, you know what? You're a young chief. Don't be ashamed. These chiefs, they have the same problems you have. You have manpower problems? Yep. You have discipline problems? Yep. They have the same problem, but on a higher level. So walk around, meet some of these guys. I said, well, how would I call a guy, Chicago Fire Department, you know? And he said he'd probably be very happy to tell you. And he said, I'm going to give you your first lesson. The first year you're chief, they don't accept you. Okay.
True.
Your second year you chief, it's iffy. In the third year, they say he's the boss because you've been there 3 years. And they said, he's here. There ain't nothing we can do about it. He's the boss. So he said, remember that. And he said, that's one of the things you have to enforce it. And I'm going to give you a rule. 1 to 3 years it takes you to really be the chief for them to accept you. 3 to 8 years are your best years building. After 10 years, look at getting out. I said, you serious? I'm a young guy. I could go. No, he said, look at getting out. I'm telling you, chiefs don't want to face that, but they have to face it. Yeah. And his words stuck in my mind. Oh.
I love that. So that's still, I love that these stories are just cyclical. It's all the same stuff. You're when you go to a conference and what was your first impression, which was like, I can't talk to a guy from the Los Angeles fire chief. He's too big. He's too important. He don't care about little old Lafayette. And what did he tell you? That it's no big deal. And we have the same experience today with the conferences that we go to, where you run into some big names of some big departments. And he said he probably would love to talk to you. The Chicago, he'd probably love if you called him and asked him questions. And lo and behold, I can't speak for every fire chief in every big department. Like, I probably can't call up the New York fire chief, the fire commissioner, and have a chat with him. But the point is that they generally do enjoy helping out other fire chiefs, and they are very approachable, and they're just normal dudes like everybody else.
Well, one of the things I did after I came back from when Willie Miller became chief of Baton Rouge Fire Department, every month I would go visit him for lunch, or he'd come to Lafayette next month. Shreveport, Dallas Green. Dallas was the leading fire department in the state of Louisiana. I'd go visit Dallas. And we'd just talk. And I'd tell Dallas, I'm having this problem. And he says, I faced that already. And I had that relationship with the chief in Lake Charles, Shreveport, Baton Rouge, Ellick, Chief Caruth. He and I were good friends. And I developed that. New Orleans is on a different cycle. So go and talk to them. I love Chief McCrossin, but I mean, they're on a different cycle. They just
marching to the beat of their own drum over there.
They wasn't under our civil service. They have their own civil service.
Yes, got it.
And they did crazy things like I'd walk in and say, he says, I have 20 captain vacancies. Why aren't you filling them? Well, we wait and see. I said, you have 20 vacancies? Yeah, I got 5 in chief vacancies. Me and the mayor's talking. I said, oh, my God. Us, we try to fill them as soon as you get, an opening, you try to fill it to keep the cycle going. But that was a different ball game.
We had a buddy that left for New Orleans Fire Department, and he came from here, and then he went to New Orleans for a short period of time.
Right.
And he said it's the Wild West out there. He said, "Man, I don't know if I've ever shown up to work in uniform." I'm like, "Oh, New Orleans is a different. They're a different animal. There's just something separate from."
I'm going to tell you something, which is a true story. When I left and I didn't retire, I decided to become a fire equipment dealer and sell fire trucks. I was going to really do an all patch, but that's when the all patch wasn't paying their bills. So I said, I'm going to sell fire trucks. And went to New Orleans, became friend with a guy called Donald Buck. Never forget, Donald was there. He had retired captain. He had a heart attack, went back as their administrative officer for planning. And he'd do all the specs of the fire truck. And he says, we're going to go down to Station 10, I don't remember, Station 10, about 10 o'clock. So we walk in station 10 o'clock. The captain's in like a robe. And he said, we said, I said, "Yo guys care for a cocktail?" And I look at Don. He said, "Don said I take a scotch and water." He looks at me, "What you drink?" I said, "I'll tell you, whiskey and water." I figured it was a joke.
A joke. You're right.
Yeah. He fixed it right then for me. And he's sitting down and he said, "Hey," and he called some name, "Get that woman out the dormitory." And I'm up there. Oh man, this has to be a joke they're gonna play on me.
Right. There's gonna be like a surprise. We're joking. You were waiting on that.
And I went back Central, and Bill McCrossin called me, and the superintendent, the big chief. He said, "Did they help you out at that station?" I was frozen. I said, I don't want to rat on the guys. I don't want to. He said, "What, they having a cocktail?" I said, "Yes, sir, Chief." He said, "We're kind of a little different, Wayne." He said,
Jesus.
I'm up there. I can't talk.
This is shocking.
It is.
Shocking. Yeah. Once again, New Orleans, different animal. Just a different animal.
And I'm sure today none of that goes on.
No. But
And at that time era, it just
it's his own world. Yeah. New Orleans is different. What are some of the so you talked a little bit about getting outside training, pushing that to the guys to start trying to standardize some of your stuff. What was some other tough spots that you face as the chief, whether it be with disciplinary problems or whether it be with fighting the administration and or possibly the mayor? What were some real tough spots when you were the fire chief that you had to kind of navigate?
Well, I got put into a box early when the mayor we had would go a lot of times at Don, have lunch with people at Don's. And he'd come back and he had a white glove. And he'd go in the fire truck on the dashboard and pass it. And he'd come in, "That truck's dirty. You tell me they keep the equipment clean?" So he ordered me, at that time, I think it was called a green slip, which was a reprimand, but I gave 80 out the first year.
Yeah, man.
Because he'd go to substations and walk in, and they all happy because they voted for him. And he called me and said, "This fireman, his shirt was out of his pants and all kind of stuff. I want that guy written up." And I'm up there, Jesus Christ. These are all friends of mine. Not everybody hates me, So finally, what happened in disciplinary, he called me one night and he says, "Son, Chief sent 2 inspectors to Arena Drive, the Knights of Columbus, and take all the license plate numbers." I said, "What?" "Take all the license plate numbers. They're having a barbecue, and it's all people that they're going to run against me, and I want to know all." I said, "I'm not doing that. That's not an inspector's job." "Oh, really? I'm going to fire you." Well, I said, "Do what you got to do, Kenny, but I'm not sending my inspectors out."
Do what you got to do.
That is not their job. "Well, you be in my office tomorrow morning at 6:30. I said, "Okay, that's fine." So I told him, well, I said, "Here I go," So I walked in and he said, I appointed you chief, and I'm your boss." And boy, he gave me all kind of hell. Then I think we bought the icing on the cake. I wasn't sleeping at night. I really wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
I'd get up at 3 o'clock and look in the mirror and say, "Man, I can do something. I just can't do that no more," And I think the icing hit the cake when he had a fire driver that was really politicking against him. And I get a call, and he says, "Be in my office at 6:15. I said, "All right." So I went. In those days, we had those not coveralls that you zip up. I went, and he said, "You're not in uniform." I said, "I'm going to take shift till 8 o'clock. I said, so you have me here at 6. He said, I want you to fire this certain engineer. I said, why? He said, you know, last night he shacked up with a woman. He's married. I said, so what? And he got caught at a high rate of speed. So I want you to fire him. I said, wait a minute. So I called communications. I said, this particular individual, no, Chief, he's on his days off. So I hung up the phone. I said, Mayor, I can't fire the guy. He's on his days off. And what he does on his time off is none of my business. As long as he don't rob a bank or something like that. I mean, if he wants to go shack up with a woman, then that's between him and his wife, not me. So he said, oh, really? So he said, you fired. I said, well, that's your prerogative. He walks in the city attorney. He's in a bad mood coming in at that time. Almond Raw. And he walks in, he sits down, he said, what's up, Wayne? I said, I don't know, here. So he goes through the sand and he said, Harmon, I want you to write a letter and fire this guy. Harmon says, are you crazy? He said, we don't set morality and things like that sort, you know? He said, you can't do it. You're not God, you know? And he said, well, y'all both fired. I got up, I looked at Harmon, we walk out the Harmon, said, go back to y'all. Yeah, fired. So I went back and waited for the phone to ring. No ring. So Harmon called me. He said, you okay, Chief? He said, I'm his attorney. We ain't backing him on that. I mean, that's crazy. So he said, I'll handle it. Don't worry about it. Let him cool down. He said, you know. So anyway, but that's the kind of stuff we went on with the mayor. The mayor was, he wanted me to fight in my early years. So finally, you know, one day I walked, I said, Kenny, I got to talk to you. I said, I'm not doing none of this. I said, I was raised with half of these guys went up, and they're not bad people. You know, we're doing the training, we're trying to do the right thing. We're giving the best service we can to the public. So he says, all right, Chief. I could tell in his eyes this wasn't sitting well with him. So they hired an independent firm, Al Sullers, an associate, to come evaluate the fire department. I was out of Chicago. And I knew Al. I had met him. He was on the great, he had worked for the ISO, the people that raided us and went to Chicago. I had met him. But anyway, he had his own company, he retired. Mm-hmm. And he came and he spent 2 weeks, you know.
Just evaluating everything.
Oh, yeah, everything.
Operations.
Riding to a fire, this and that. Well, he came out with the book. I mean, it was about that much. Mm-hmm. And he called me and he said, Chief, I'm sending you a copy. The mayor got his yesterday. You got yours today. Yes, I got it in the mail. So her whole staff came out and said, come on, make copies. So we got one gig, and it was that an aerial, when at a hospital, shouldn't go up to the hospital. He should wait a block down for positioning purposes. And the boy read the report, so about a week went by. He not talking to me. Him and one or two of his Fed City Councilmen just not talking. They're reading the report. So I walked in and said, hey, Kenny, the reporter, we're going to have a news conference and call all the news media in and report, because what I read is we're doing a damn good job. He said, where did you get a copy of that report? Oh, I said, I have my own sources. Oh, somebody in this office, I'm going to fire him. You know, he says, he threw it in the garbage can right in front of me. Something like 20,000. He threw it in the garbage can. And he looks and he said, the guy don't know what he's talking about.
20 G's to get this guy to rate it. It was a good rating. But it did. He was trying to put some
and then
all
he
this
called
bad
me
stuff, but there was no bad stuff.
Yeah, and about 3 weeks later, he calls me at 6 o'clock, and he says, be at my office at 6 p.m. So when I walked in, Bertha, his secretary, Bertha's still alive, she said. She's like that. Walked in, sat down. He locks the door. Gives me a letter. It's my resignation. And it goes something like this. Dear Mayor, please accept my resignation. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to serve as chief of the fire department, but I find that it's above my ability to run the fire department, all this. So I looked at that. I said, you want me to sign this? We're going to be here till hell freezes over. And he said, you're going to sign it. And he threw a book at me.
Really?
Threw a book. I think he threw, I don't know how many files, but at 9 o'clock that night, we still trying to get me to, yelling at me. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. 9 o'clock, his private phone rings. Picks it up. Hey, Judy, how you doing? My wife. I can't repeat what my wife told him on the phone. But, Judy, yeah, I let him go home, keep supper warm or something. What Judy told him was, supper's been ready since 6:30, and I don't know where's my husband, and she chewed his. And he took it during next week. She said, comes in, my wife, high heels, all. I said, where you been? Said, the mayor took me to lunch. I said, are you crazy like a fruitcake? He just tried to fire me. She said, no, he just said, for me to give you encouragement and stuff.
Like, wait, where was all that? Where was all that in the meeting that you just,
That's it. I'm looking at my wife. My wife said, he was very nice. I said, oh, man,
So you ended up surviving that dip?
He tried 5 times to fire.
Jeez.
Different time. And I'm going to give you one case where they had a fire, 3-story house, doctor's home. And when I drive up, the district chief is in the bushes. I mean, there's hedges. He's in. What are you doing in the hedge? He said, the mayor's here. I said, the mayor's here. Yeah, he wants to direct the damn fire. I said, so I walk. I said, hey, Kenny, come here. What's going on? And there's a news meeting there. And I said, what's going on? He said, I'm telling you, I'm firing you. I said, why? He said, when I got here, the fireman, I asked him how many minutes it takes him to connect to the hydrant. I said, let me get this straight. He's making a plug, and you take him away from the plug, a water source? Yep. And he said, they got another fireman come out of there. He's picking in his nose. And so I said, he took his air mask and he's got soot in his nose, Kenny. He said, well, here's the kicker. That guy on the ladder went up on that ladder with a hose with no water in it. I said, that's a 3-inch hose. Superman couldn't pick that hose up. So he's up there. You fired. Just like that in front of everybody. So use me a hole. Well, what you going to do, Chief? I said, I don't know. Went back to my office. This was about 10 at night. I called Richard Chop, who was head of civil service. I called Richard. Richard said, they ain't firing.
It's crazy how many...
I told him the story. Then the city attorney called home and said, don't worry about it.
He said it so many times. How would you even know if you were ever actually fired? There'd be no way to know. Like, which one's the real one,
Yeah.
There's no way to know.
No.
Because he would say it all the time.
I just
You're
walk
fired.
off. Yeah, I'm going back to the office.
That was his way of blowing up. That was his way of just being angry. You're fired. You're fired. But he never meant it. I get until he means it. But how would you know? How would you know? Anyway.
I think he wanted, but he didn't have grounds, and he had no grounds to fire him.
Oh, Lord have mercy. So, Chief, one of the things that you had on the list, I want to kind of come back and catch it before we go, is you have a couple of names there, Roland Dart and John Hyde. I want you to go ahead and speak on that.
Yeah, Roland was not from here. Roland was from San Francisco area, but Kenny Boyne wanted to go out and get the top-notch police chief. He did he did not like the present chief that was in office. So Roland was executive director for the International Association of Police Chiefs.
Okay.
And he hired him, and he came down, and I never forget, I walked in the office, Roland was sitting there. Kenny says, I want you to model yourself after this man.
Mm-hmm.
And I just looked back and I said, well, that might be your opinion, So we left on a negative note, Roland and I. And about a week later, he came by the office. Very intelligent guy. He got his doctorate, came in and sat and said, you're not going to be the greatest friends. Now, don't let anybody, we both public safety. And we did become the best friends. Wound up going to his house, drinking wine, having stuff at his house. We became friends. And when he left, he told me, he said, I'm looking for another job. I can't work for this man. Wow. And he got the job with the Navajo Indian Reservation. They had helicopters and all that. And but we became good. I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot about discipline. First thing he recommended, he said, you still putting your general orders and special orders on the bulletin board? Yeah. Here's what you need to do. You need to type each order out, have an order. Everybody has a ring binder. They get that order, and attached to it is, I hereby read and understood. That's all you ask them to do. And that way, if something happens down the road, when they come and say, oh, I don't remember that, I can't see that, it is on file, you read it and you understood it. And it was things like that he helped me along as a young chief, and how to handle stuff. And I can't tell you how to handle the mayor. I'm not that good yet. But he was great. And then when he left, they hired Johnny Hyde. And Johnny was personal friends with the mayor at that time. And Johnny came in, same introduction, this man can teach you a lot and all. John and I became good friends. We would barbecue at each other's house. But John was in the military, police intelligence section, and had a lot of good things I learned from him, and vice versa. We became good friends. And Lafayette just didn't have that relation between. John and I were more, competitive. We had this big thing at Lafayette High with from muscular dystrophy or something, and we had to go compete. So John comes from Austin and says, I got T-shirts donated to, oh my God, they're going to wear this. So I called Ray and all them in. I said, we're getting shirts and we're going to beat them. And we beat them on every event. And Johnny, he was fit to be tied, damn fireman, and stuff. But we had a good relationship. We really did. I could ask him for anything. I'll give you an example. We had the fire chief, Southwest Fire Chief in Lafayette. Mm-hmm. He assigned 3 police cars to me, escorts everywhere we wanted to go as a group in the buses, escorts, and everybody would say, Wayne's got a parade everywhere we go. We got police escorts. And when he had his conference, I sent a district chief's car to pick up people at the airport for him and stuff like that. And that's kind of relationship we had. Yeah. And he was the type, if a fireman got in trouble or did something, he would call me and say, I'm one of your boys. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you what they're facing. Mm. And in fact, one of the cutest ones were We had one firefighter. He was in jail, and his mama called in and said he was too sick to go to work. And I get a phone call from Johnny Hyde, and he said, "Let me tell you about a firefighter I got." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "We got him locked up right now. What you want to do with him?" I said, "What do you mean?" Deputy chief was sitting right there, and he said, "Well, he called in sick. Mama called in sick for him this morning. He was in jail." But we had he tried to help.
Tried to help, yeah.
Yeah, if a fireman did something, he would tell me, "Let's go talk to him." We had one firefighter who was doing drugs. Never forget, got him in the office. John said, "Man, you want to go away for a long time?" We talked to him, and Johnny called me because he called him for 4 weeks in a row and talked to him and said, "You doing okay? Don't make me go pick you up."
Wow.
And police chiefs don't take that kind of time today to do stuff like that. It was just great. And whatever I could do for him, he had some kind of function coming up. He knew I had the best cooks. So I'd call him, "You guys want to go cook? John's got a meeting coming up. Would y'all go cook for him?" "Oh, yeah, Chief, we'll go." So.
Yeah, that's excellent. Before we wrap, not wrap up, but like before we get into you leaving the chief position, we talked a lot about the adversity, because I think in my opinion, it's important to hear the adversity, because anybody's listening to know that anytime you try to make change that you're going to run into that. But I don't want to end it on the negative note of adversity. I want you to talk about changes you were able to implement that lasted, that you feel good about, that you said, "Hey, we didn't have this thing, and I was able to have some success before my tenure as fire chief was up."
Well, one was forming all of the special divisions in the fire department. I was proud of that we had people that we sent them to schools and qualified. Changing the fire line, where the fire line was really doing real effective training. They were handling fires just superior. I was really proud the way they were handling emergency calls. And the relationship, you lose some, but most of the guys, I think, respected what I was doing. And that's just still to be said whether. But I was just proud of the department as a whole, where we were going. And the biggest, somebody told me that in a nice way. He said, the biggest thing was you were 10 years ahead of the department. And you were trying to pull that 10 years, you were just 10 years ahead. And you got caught in a wedge. I said, "Yeah, I understand." But anyway, I'm proud of the department where they are today. I really am.
Yeah. I completely agree. Yeah, it's tough when you're a little bit ahead of your time.
Yeah.
Because the kickback, it's easier it's easier if the department's ahead of you and you pull yourself up to it. But if you're the one that's, like you said, you're facing some serious headwinds. So, but anyway, so you retire. You end up retiring in 1982.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, you've been around a bit, because I was born in 83 and I'm 43 years old, which means you've been retired for 44-ish years at this point. I want to talk about you are still and have been pretty consistently involved in the fire service for the last 44 some odd years to various aspects. So you retire, you leave Lafayette, you have a passion for the fire service, clearly.
I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Sure.
And a friend of mine came and said, "Why don't you come with me and sell fire trucks?" He had, I said, "Oh, man, we couldn't work together. I'd kill you the second day." and we laughed. He said, "Well, why don't we start a business? Why don't you open your own company? And I'll be a part of it and help you out." I said, "Fine." So I had one fire chief in Texas, and he who invested for me to start a company. And I paid them back within 2 years. The money they had invested out. Just held the line on the budget, sold a lot of trucks. And when I went to the business, the 4 or 5 guys in the state that had fire equipment businesses were making real good money. And they told me, you're not going to survive. We're going to run you out of the business. I said, you can do what you want, you know. And they tried cutting prices big time. I mean, on say loose equipment, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, you want to? I have a pension to myself. I have a pension. You don't have a pension. So you want to play a game? We'll play a game.
Yeah.
So
you're
I
going to win the long
sold
game.
at cost.
Yeah.
I started selling hose, nozzles at cost, and they'd call the manufacturer. He can't do that. The manufacturer, I said, I can do what I want. As long as I'm making you money, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So that game lasted for about a year, and then it went back to a level playing field. And then the fire trucks, I was handling Seagrave. They didn't build commercial trucks, and I was handling different lines. And in 1988, they were having trouble with the deal they had here. So they came and said, we're going to interview 4 companies in Louisiana. And I'm not going to name their names, but they want dealership real bad. And so anyway, they interviewed the 3 companies, then came to us. And when he walked in, the salesman, I didn't forget, we're in a cubicle. I have a warehouse, small office space. And he sat down and he's talking to Judy and I, and he said, this your whole operation? Yeah. Mutt and Jeff, her and I. And he said, how would you like to be a Pierce dealer? I said, I'd love to be a Pierce dealer. Y'all have a good reputation, huh? I said, but I got to ask you a question. I said, the question I need to ask you is, other companies have big warehouses. They have multi-salesmen. Why would you even look at me? He said, well, I just left one of them. And he promised he's going to sell me 30, 40 trucks a year. But there's a guy called Wayne Prejean who has a track record. He sold 50 trucks to the city of New Orleans. He's got a track record. And you have made no promises to us how much you're going to sell. But we know you're going to sell. Mm-hmm. So, and then they flew Judy and I up, and I became, and I stayed with the fire service because I loved it. Mm-hmm. And I'd go to all the conferences, and being past president of Southwest, past president of Louisiana Fire Chiefs, and active in the Louisiana State Farm. They invite me into board meetings and all that. That's where I stayed active, and I stayed friends with a lot of the fire chiefs. Did donations when I was in business to things they had and sponsored and stuff. But that was.
Let me. I want to talk to you about the, and this is important to me, the outside training and conferences. Mm-hmm. You've seen an evolution in your career. I say career, I would lifetime, really.
Yeah.
That essentially outside training was extremely difficult to come by or almost non-existent when you first came into the fire service. It had to be internal because there was really not too many other places you could go. And then as the decades start rolling by, you as a peer salesman have seen some of these conferences come online. Training is more available in closer to you. Bigger venues are available closer to you. What's your thought on that? What's your experience on that?
It's fantastic. I'm gonna tell you what. Last year, I decided I don't know what really educational wise they're going to. So I took a course, online course with Bossier City Community College. They're trying to get me to finish a degree with them, but I went online, took all the tests, and I was surprised at the changes in terminology and stuff that they have today. And it was a tremendous opening like a flower for me on how the fire service just has so many opportunities today. Hazmat is just one of its own things. Rescue's one of its own things. Firefighting culture has changed.
And that's
The educational level, the things that are just available to firefighters is amazing. And I serve on the Civil Service Board. I'm recommending that we go and revive all of the fire classification plans. And I want to tell you why. When this hazmat, Chad left, they were arguing about third-party testing and all this. And in our requirements, qualifications, we're not very clear. The fire chief's another example. We just had one here. You had a guy from the Broussard Fire Department that's had a degree in all that the board voted it wasn't in, but nothing is really spelled out. So I talked to the chief administrative officer. So here's the game plan with that. Game plan is I'll represent Civil Service Board for the fire department. We'll get the fire chief, the new fire chief, the chief of training, and whatever positions we're working on, we'll get somebody from that class, and we'll start rewriting the qualifications, but spell it out better and make it easier so a fireman. And I'm going to give you something that nobody probably is going to like to hear from. But education plays a big thing. And if you want to be a chief officer in the Lafayette Fire Department, you should have at least an associate degree. And I'm going to tell you what, learning by going online, you have LSU, you have Bossier City Community College, you have Delgado. They all have courses, and I went to visit, that are simple to go. You can go online. You don't even have to go to class. Mm-hmm. You get the book, you go online, you talk to the instructor. They have a period you go on where he teaches the class online. So I'm thinking, when I'm at a fire station and I have spare time,
sure,
get a laptop computer, I can get my degree while I'm on duty on the Lafayette Fire Department.
Sure.
And if I understand correctly, if I pass that, I pay for that course, and I pass it, the city will reimburse me as long as I have a C average or better.
Correct. Yeah, that is correct.
So, I mean, let's get our guys to be the best professionals we have in the business. If we're going to ask for more money and more benefits, let's show the public.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my passion.
Yeah. Here's what we're giving back to you. We're asking for more. Here's what more we're going to
Here's what we did.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's going to fly.
Yeah. We'll see. Yeah,
we'll see.
We'll see. So you sell trucks. You sell trucks. You're doing different things. Did you eventually retire from the selling the truck side?
Well, what happened that is I sold the largest contract ever sold city in New Orleans. I'm going to make you laugh. I had that account for 20 years. I was in the mid 20 years. I had New Orleans account. Nobody ever had New Orleans for more than a year. I had it for 20 years. In fact, my competition would say, "Oh, he's part of the mafia. That's why he has that contract." Yeah, and it was comical. But I had a great relationship with City of New Orleans, and I sold them that $8-9 million contract for all the trucks. They bought 30 at one time. Mm-hmm. And we just, the truck business has changed. It's changing. Mm. It's crazy right now. I just can't believe, but it's there, that you buy a platform and it's $1.78 million for a platform with the equipment, and I'm out there. God, the prices have went up since I left. But in 1994, Oshkosh, the people that build military trucks, bought out Pierce. And their philosophy was 10% increase, 10% increase every year.
Every year.
And my problem was I had a manufacturer in the state that doesn't have dealers. He sells direct. If people that work for him sell them, but he sells direct. Now, how can I compete with his price? I can't compete with his pricing. Well, Pierce worked, and we tried, and I still sold. I had Lake Charles, Alexandria, Lafayette, New Orleans, Slidell, Tarrytown, Mandeville. I had all the real good accounts in the state of Louisiana. The only ones I didn't have were Shreveport, Monroe, and Baton Rouge. But yet, you know, for a mom and pop, a two-person, you know. So finally, when Oshkosh, they came and they said, this ain't going to work. You got to hire a large number of salesmen. You got to build a plant in the New Orleans area, a service center, which will cost $1 million. And at that time, I was 63, 62 years old. And my wife said, ain't going to do it. We got everything paid for. You have heart issues. If you have a heart attack and die, there ain't no way I can run this company.
Right.
So I called Pierce and said, you can have a dealership. And they said, what you going to do? I said, I have no idea. I may go work for your competition. He said, oh, no, you know. So anyway, they gave the dealer, they called me and said, all right, we have a Mississippi dealer, Arkansas, and Texas. Who do you think we ought to give a dealership to? I said, although I don't get along with Leon Martin Sr., he curses me out and everything. I said, I'd give it to the Texas dealership. And they gave it to Leon Jr. was just coming up. And he drove, as soon as the deal was cut with them, the next day he drove up and said, Mr. Wayne, would you be a salesman for us? He said, man, you know everybody, would you? So I went to work, and I said, this ain't going to work. I'm 62, 63. Leon's 42 years old. Ain't going to work. He yells at everybody, screams, ain't not going to work. But, you know, he was the best boss I could have ever. And we good friends today. We are still good friends.
So you get out of the truck selling business, you retire, or you did, and we know what you're doing today, but like for 20, you still got 20 years of time. Do you still dabbling in the fire service?
I stayed active. I worked for them until I was 72.
Okay. So 10 years working for them. Yeah. After giving up your business.
I worked for them, and it was comical. Pat came, and they were firing people. They were firing salesmen who wasn't. And I had just sold 5 trucks that year. And it was kind of comical because Leon called me and he said, Wayne, I'm coming to visit. I need to talk to you. I said, they're going to terminate me, you know. And he drove up, and he has all the paperwork and all. He said, you know, you only sold 5 trucks.
Yeah.
And this other guy sold 7 or 9 or what. Yeah. And we having some drinks, and I said, pull out that paperwork of that guy. I said, he sold, how much you made on that truck? How much you made on this truck? I said, I sold you 5. I sold 2 aerials for you to this department. You made $125 per aerial for you. Mm-hmm. I sold 3 pumpers. You made $110,000 on each one. I'm thinking them guys, you made $20,000 off them trucks per truck. Mm-hmm. Oh, he said, forget about paperwork. Let's go out and eat. That's it. That's it. I'm sorry. That's it. You know. So anyway, I decided it's going to be time. My wife had passed away, and I said, it's time for me to go. So Pat came to us, sales meeting, show we had, fire chief show. It was in Baton Rouge, I think. New Orleans. And we all went for dinner. So I said, Pat, at the end of the month, I'm retiring. He said, you sure you want to do it? And I don't come back 2 months from now and ask me for a job. I said, it'd be nice, a man 72 years old begging for a job, I guess. So about 2 days later, Leon calls me and, I can't believe you done that. I said, what are you talking about? He said, nobody was firing you. I told him my feelings. Nobody was firing you. We're going to keep you on the payroll just to be a PR guy for it. And he said, first of all, nobody fire you but me, and I ain't about. And we still good friends. I love Leon. He's a terrific Christian.
So you step away. Finally, you finally retire, but then you don't retire because once again you still messing around. But it's
when I left this, I said, I spent 20 years in the Lafayette Fire Department, 20 years selling fire trucks. My whole life has been with the fire service, so I'd like to do something good. Now, these are the people, not only fire, but the first response. They do good things. So we started this group, and this is the finale of it all. We it was myself, called Donald Bach, Robert Benoit came aboard a little later, and I said, we're going to be a Christian organization, but what we're going to do is honor. I'm not going to hustle money. I'm going to ask people. And I said, bottom line is that we're going to honor fire, policemen, EMS, sheriff, people that do good things, people that save lives and stuff. And it's not a politic where you call me and say, I think this guy ought to have this award. No. We will go on what that person has done in their life. And I start off with a board, probably about 10. And everybody said, yeah. And I said, well, we're going to get the money. I said, I'm going to raise the money. So I went to the Beavers Club. I figured the Beavers were going to give me $5,000. Mm-hmm. I got $500. So anyway.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, we had to come up with $6,000 for the first year, $7,000. And I want you to listen to this very carefully. I'm sitting down. I just have a policy at night to read scripture. Just I read, the Bible. And the phone rings. A clear blue sky. I just put it down. It's Leon. I said, man, I ain't talked to you in about 6 months. You must be bored to call me. And he said, I'm on my way to Dallas. Let me check on Mr. Wayne. He said, by the way, how's that association going y'all trying to do? I told him, Leon, I got to come up by the end of the week. He said, well, how much you need? I said, about $6,000. He said, why don't I give you $6,500? I have the check to you day after tomorrow. I said, fantastic. And hung up the phone and I won't say it faith of God, but it came through. And then there's another gentleman in town, Matt Stuller. I knew Matt, and I called Matt. Boom, it was done. And those two guys have been our main sponsors, and I have some other people I'm working with right now, which are going to come aboard. My dream is to have a museum for the first responders. We've been talking about it for all these years, and the city's been promising us a building. It just hasn't come. Well, I was hoping is to have 4 sections: fire, police, sheriff, EMS. Have a classroom, bring school kids in, and have sessions in the morning, afternoons, field trips for them, and let them know that the people, the first responders, is the best friend you can have, and they're there to help you. A police officer's not there to arrest you. Yeah, if you're breaking the law, he is, but he's there to help you. Firefighter is here to help you, teach you, and EMS, they pick you up in an ambulance, try to give you the best service. And that was my goal. And we have it off the ground. Financially, I'm walking out as president. I'm stepping down within the next week as president. But it's time to get some new blood. But we creating a position of executive director, no salary.
Correct.
So myself and Robert Benoit has volunteered to be executive directors, and we are going to work as hard as we can with no money or anything. But our job is to raise money, see that this museum gets built, and just make firefighters feel good about themselves. We're going to start retreats. We have the first one around the state in Lafayette, September 19th. I think it's November 21st. We're going to have them in Baton Rouge. And after the first of the year, we're going to have one in Shreveport, Alexandria, and Baton Rouge. A one-day, it's a luncheon, not a retreat. It's, you come in, we'll have 3 different speakers, and we'll provide the meal. I have these people in the bank said, don't worry about it.
Sure.
And it's a thing to, in fact, I brought the grab, and it's working.
What's the name of this? What's the name of this retreat?
It's going to be First Responders Retreat.
First Responder Retreat. Yeah. Okay.
And we didn't know what to give in the booth. I'm going to make you laugh. We had. So the church had all of these little Jesus, and not to get on that kick, but we are a religious group.
Correct.
And I put them on the table, and for 2-3 years, nobody comes to our booth because that word Christian is in there. And one chief finally came and said, how much are your Bibles? I said, I'm not selling Bibles. Well, everybody here thinks that's what you're doing, selling religious material. I said, no, we're giving stuff away. The first responders, we don't sell anything. So I put these for the first year, which was last year. And I ordered 100. And it 100 went the first day. And I'm going to tell you why. 2 firefighters came by. They were the first 2, and they said, what's those little Jesus? I said, y'all take it. I said, if you just put it in your pocket, and if you're a Christian, you're having a bad day, just kind of squeeze on a little bit. Mm-hmm. Let them know.
Sure.
And things will change. And he said, we'll come get them tomorrow. We're going on Bourbon Street tonight. True story.
Maybe keep them out the pocket for that night.
All the wine that came by, I tell them, put one in your purse. And man, they kept going. So after a while, they finally came. One guy said, are you the Jesus guy? I said, oh, no, I'm not even close. Not even close. I'm just giving the Jesus. Yeah. And that's what I'm hoping to do. That the fire service, right now they're killing police officers all over. You know that.
Sure.
I mean, the problems we're having in schools and all. And I'm hoping if we can get a museum, we'll be the first one in the state. Maybe we can have offshoots where we can teach these young people. These are good people. They're helping us. I see a fireman. I want to love him. I want to love a police officer, sheriff deputy, EMS. And that's my goal, just to give back to the fire service something that they did for me.
Yeah, that's it's a super noble cause. Y'all been at it for a while. Y'all don't have $1 billion in your account. I know that y'all are running a shoestring budget.
Yeah.
And y'all are trying to do good things for the fire service. And we're happy you're here. We like seeing you here. Chief, this is about where we tie it up. I'm gonna give you a final word, because I know this is you're fixing to kind of sort of stepping away from the organization. You'll still be involved with it, but you're stepping down as president. But I want you to, we appreciate your time here, but leave us with a final thought on whether it be your career, the fire service in general, whatever you want to leave on us. We're open for it.
Our future is the young people. I was a Scoutmaster 55 and a half years. That's a long time to stay on the meetings every Monday night and all. I was in the fire service. My whole life's been wrapped around the fire service. And what I'd like to say is that we need to start with the young people. Right now, everything you see on TV is shoot, shoot, shoot. Look at the movies. They've changed. And, you know, to me, the first responders are the real heroes in life beside the military. And I just like to say, you know, I hear people say, when you see one, tell them, thank them for their service. Well, do a little more than that. Stop by a fire station. Stop a police officer sitting in the car or something and just say, you know what? I thank you for giving your time. Because we don't know when you can go, when disaster hits or shootings or things of that nature. But anyway, I hope in my life we make a little difference in thanking the people who I know is out there 24 hours a day trying to protect the public.
Excellent. Chief, super honored to have you in. To have so much history from not only our department, but the fire service in general. You've been connected to the service for 60 years at this point or more. It's good to be able to capture some of your thoughts on the fire service, some of your history, some of your stories. And like I said, we couldn't be more honored to have you in, especially because you're coming from my department, which is it's important to me also. If you need anything, you know, let us know, help you out in any way that we can.
Appreciate you.
Where can people learn more about your organization?
We have a website. We have the media page has been let go. We were doing little 2-paragraph spiritual messages, and we lost that guy. He had, for personal reason, got off board. So we have to redo it. But there's a guy here, I understand, that has great vision. So if I can get him motivated to take that and do that, we're going to move on. I'm not going anywhere. I mean, you're going to have a great president stepping in my shoes. But I am going to continue as long as I can physically and mentally.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you're still here. Glad you're still sharp in mind. Still got the fire in your belly to continue to move this project forward. So we hope to have maybe more conversations potentially in the future. So, Chief, once again,
I wish you well. Yeah. You're doing an awesome job.
Yeah, just I got less years than you. I've only got 6 years left before I retire, and then it's probably the beach. Maybe I'll still stay active in the fire service. But
yeah, stick around.
Stick around. We got plenty of time, right?
Become a famous podcaster.
that I wouldn't be mad at it, but that's not the goal. But Chief, once again, thank you for your time, and
thank you.
If you need anything, let us know.
Okay.
All right, appreciate it.